the early days of the internet, there was a quiet optimism about what it would give us. Information would be abundant, connections would be effortless, and knowledge would no longer be locked behind institutions or gatekeepers. The assumption was simple and sincere. If people had access to more, they would live better. Yet something unexpected happened along the way. As access expanded, attention became fragmented. As the connection increased, the presence weakened. And as choice multiplied, clarity quietly eroded. Most of us did not consciously choose this trade-off. It arrived gradually, disguised as convenience. A phone in the pocket, notifications that promised relevance, feeds that never ended. None of it felt harmful in isolation. But together, they began to shape how we think, how we feel, and how we spend the most irreplaceable resource we have, our attention. The core problem is not that technology exists, or even that we use it often. The problem is that many of us no longer decide how we use it. Our attention is increasingly pulled rather than directed. The promise of understanding digital minimalism is not that you will abandon modern tools or retreat from the world. It is that you will learn how to reclaim agency over your attention, so that technology serves your values instead of quietly reshaping them. The foundational principle. At the heart of digital minimalism is a simple but demanding principle. Your attention is finite, valuable, and deeply connected to the quality of your life. How you spend it decides not just what you do, but who you become. Digital minimalism does not argue that technology is inherently bad. Instead, it challenges the assumption that more connectivity automatically leads to more fulfillment. It asks a more careful question: which digital tools genuinely support what matters to you, and which ones merely fill empty space? Most people think the problem is self-control. They assume that if they were just more disciplined, they would scroll less, focus more, and feel calmer. But this misunderstands the situation. The modern digital environment is not neutral. It is engineered to capture and hold attention for as long as possible. Digital minimalism reframes the issue. The goal is not to resist temptation endlessly. The goal is to design a digital life that aligns with your deeper intentions, so that attention flows naturally toward what you value. This shift, from reacting to choosing, is the mental model that carries through everything that follows. Key ideas and applications. First, attention is shaped by environment, not willpower. The first idea is subtle but powerful. Your attention is far more influenced by your environment than by your intentions. When your phone is within reach, your brain allocates part of its capacity to monitoring it, even if it remains untouched. When notifications are enabled, your mind stays slightly alert, anticipating interruption. And over time, this constant low-level stimulation changes how focus feels. Depth begins to feel uncomfortable, and silence starts to feel empty. In real life, this shows up in small, familiar ways. You check your phone during brief pauses, not because you need information, but because stillness feels unfamiliar. You struggle to read for long stretches. Conversations feel slightly thinner, attention drifting in and out. But the good part is that applying this idea does not require radical changes. It starts with noticing how your surroundings shape your behavior. Where do you place your phone when you work, eat, or rest? Which apps are allowed to interrupt you, and which quietly wait? By making small environmental adjustments, creating spaces that invite focus rather than fragmentation, you reduce the need for constant self-control. And eventually attention becomes something you support, not something you force. Second, infinite inputs create shallow satisfaction. The second idea addresses why digital overload feels strangely unsatisfying. Infinite content provides constant stimulation, but very little nourishment. Scrolling delivers novelty without completion. Each piece of content promises interest, insight, or connection, yet rarely delivers enough to feel resolved. The result is a loop of anticipation without fulfillment. You consume more, but feel less satisfied. In modern life, this often appears as mental fatigue without meaningful accomplishment. Hours pass quickly, yet leave no clear memory. You stay busy, but struggle to articulate what you actually gained. Thoughtful application begins with distinguishing between input and value. Not all information deserves equal access to your attention. Some content enriches understanding or strengthens relationships. Much of it simply fills time. Digital minimalism encourages selective consumption. Fewer sources, slower engagement, intentional entry points rather than endless feeds. When input becomes deliberate, satisfaction deepens, and the urge to constantly seek more begins to soften. Third, solitude is not isolation, it is restoration. The third idea challenges a common misconception. Solitude is often confused with loneliness, but they are not the same. Solitude is time alone with your thoughts, free from external input. It is where reflection happens, where experiences are processed, and where meaning quietly forms. Historically, this space existed naturally through walks, waiting, boredom, and silence. But today's solitude is increasingly rare. Even moments once reserved for reflection are filled with content. Podcasts during walks, feeds during breaks, and messages during pauses. In real life, this absence of solitude shows up as emotional noise. Feelings accumulate without resolution. Decisions feel rushed, and inner clarity becomes harder to access. Applying this idea does not mean withdrawing socially or rejecting stimulation entirely. It means protecting small pockets of uninterrupted mental space. A walk without audio, a commute without scrolling, a few minutes of quiet before the day begins. These moments restore a sense of internal continuity. They allow attention to settle and thoughts to complete themselves. Fourth, technology should serve values, not replace them. The final idea brings everything together. Technology is most helpful when it amplifies values you already hold, not when it substitutes for them. Social platforms can support connection, but they cannot replace deep relationships. Productivity tools can organize tasks, but they cannot create purpose. Information can inform decisions, but it cannot define meaning. In everyday life, confusion arises when tools become stand-ins for fulfillment. You stay connected but feel lonely. You stay informed but feel uncertain. You stay busy but feel directionless. Thoughtful application requires clarifying what matters most before deciding how technology fits in. What activities genuinely bring satisfaction? What relationships deserve presence? What goals require sustained attention? Once values are clear, digital choices become simpler. Tools are kept or discarded based on alignment, not habit. Attention becomes a resource you invest, and not something you surrender. Synthesis and nuance. When viewed broadly, digital minimalism reflects an older human concern expressed in modern form. Throughout history, periods of abundance have often required restraint to preserve meaning. Too much food dulls appetite. Too much noise disrupts thought. Too many options complicate choice. The same pattern applies to attention. Without boundaries, abundance becomes burden. It is important to note that digital minimalism is not about purity or perfection. Different lives require different tools. A creator's needs differ from a parent's. A remote worker's demands differ from a student's. The goal is not uniform reduction, but intentional alignment. There are also seasons where higher connectivity is appropriate, just as there are seasons where withdrawal is restorative. Digital minimalism remains flexible because it is guided by awareness rather than rules. At its core, it invites a more mature relationship with technology, one rooted in discernment, self-knowledge, and respect for the limits of the human mind. My final takeaway from this topic: the central insight of digital minimalism is simple but profound. Your attention shapes your experience of life. When it is fragmented, life feels scattered. And when it is directed, life feels coherent. Reclaiming attention does not require rejecting the digital world. It requires choosing how you engage with it, deliberately and consistently, in service of what matters most to you. As you reflect on this idea, consider where your attention goes by default, and where you wish it went instead. Notice the small moments where choice is possible, and how even slight adjustments can restore a sense of agency. If this exploration resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone navigating the same quiet tension. And if you would like to continue these deeper reflections on focus, meaning, and intentional living, you are welcome to return for the next audio.